Hello and welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Modesta Mahiga, and today we're talking to business leaders on how to execute the 4 critical decisions to scale up your business. With me on the podcast today is Herb Cogliano. Herb Cogliano leads his own advisory practice, leveraging the Scaling Up Performance platform, described in Vern Harnich's award winning book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits Scaling Up. As a business coach, experienced CEO, scaling up practitioner, and professor of the Scaling Up Master's Business course, he's learned firsthand what it takes to overcome many business challenges. Herb is pursuing his passion of working with leaders of growth companies to achieve more freedom by helping them create industry leading strategies, a culture of accountability, flawless execution, along with a healthy cash flow within their organizations. Herb was formerly CEO of Sullivan and Cogliano Designers, a 53-year privately held, family-owned technology staffing and workforce solutions firm, who joined a select group of companies that have appeared on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing company list multiple times. His firm was a multi-year recipient of the Boston and South Florida Business Journal Best Places to Work Award. This honor recognizes Sullivan and Cogliano's achievements for changing the business landscape in creating a positive work environment that attracts and retains employees through a combination of employee satisfaction, working conditions, and company culture. Herb, welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Yes, hello, Modesta, and hello to all of your listeners on the 360 Leadership Podcast. And thank you for such a wonderful introduction. I feel so grateful for the years and experience that I've had and for the wonderful people that helped shape and grow our company over that wonderful 54-year history. So excited to be part of this discussion and look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. And thank you for mentioning 54-year track record. You have a wealth of experience building and scaling businesses, Herb. Tell us, is scaling a business something you can engineer by design, or does it depend on random alignment of organizational and market factors?
I think ultimately, as you go through year after year, some people start randomly,
Mm,
but what happens is you'll hit a stage of growth or a next stage of growth that is unknown to you.
hmm
And without a process and a playbook on how to navigate these next stages of growth, they become complex and you ultimately get stuck. There's 3 main barriers that leaders, owners encounter that I've seen.
hmm
Number one is leadership succession. They were very good handling the business earlier with the amount of direct reports, the amount in availability for decision making and communication.
mm,
But as the business got bigger, they didn't have leadership succession prepared underneath them. Their
mm,
bandwidth got extremely limited, and they didn't have people that were ready to be leaders who could be independent, autonomous, and they ended up getting miscommunication and misalignment with decision making. And that's a huge barrier for people that maybe are not comfortable or used to developing next level leaders.
This is the leadership lid that John C. Maxwell says. This is when your personal leadership then gets in the way of the potential of growth for your business.
Yeah, and Modesta, sometimes you, the owner or the leader, are the bottleneck because you're not comfortable with maybe giving up authority or delegating, or even worse, your people are not prepared to handle it.
Yeah.
So, as your business grows, you add more employees, more clients, more products, more locations. That complexity puts bottlenecks in your decision making and communication and command and control.
Mm,
And that's where the business gets bottlenecked. and you ultimately get stuck.
Mm.
And that's what we try and help leaders understand, how to look at growing the leadership team in the various important functions of the company to create bandwidth for the leader or owner or head of company to be doing more work on the company versus putting out fires working in it.
Love that. So you said that is one of them. What else would you say?
Yeah, so the first was leadership succession. The second one I described was under scalable infrastructure.
Hmm.
More people, more clients, more locations, command and decision making gets all bottlenecked. The third one is market dynamics.
Hmm.
So if you're in your business and the business is good, you were always good at selling, you could bring in more clients, but next thing you know, the market shifts. You haven't updated your products, your programs, your pricing. You haven't expanded into new territories or partnerships. And over time, you become commoditized. So, what happens is a lot of leaders are so stuck in the weeds of doing what they do and being comfortable with that they don't see the train coming right at them,
Mm.
and they're not pivoting based upon very important changing market dynamics. And that is the third barrier that people have a challenge navigating through.
So then, Herb, what would you say would be the critical success factors for scaling a business? What then, given these barriers, should they have in place to be able to transition successfully?
So I think it's under, first of all, awareness of what these three major barriers are.
Hmm.
And then, more importantly, starting to work on not making them a barrier anymore.
Hmm.
Putting in a leadership team of people that are ultimately independent and autonomous and have the ability to be an A player in their functional role, whether it's running your sales, your marketing, your finance. Scalable infrastructure is being sensitive to the org structure of decision making in communication, and how do we make that simple, and how do we give the right level authority of leaders so that the decision making is closest to the client, which allows your people to make fast, good decisions and have authority in order to make our clients happy as we grow. And then the third thing is we do quarterly planning every 90 days. We have a one-page strategic plan, and it's one page because it's got to be so simple that your entire company can understand your strategy and your roadmap for execution. And we deal with market dynamics by updating it every 90 days so that the market doesn't catch us off guard. And we're constantly evolving our core customer, our product offering to be in market demand. And that helps us avoid commoditization and competition, competitive pressure.
This is so good. So can you give me an outline of this one pager, a strategy that you work on every 90 days?
Yeah, so it begins with the core section, and that's really understanding who we are as a group of people in this company. What are the core values, the few values that all of us share and work with each other consistent with those behaviors?
Hmm.
What is the purpose that we signed on to for this organization? And is it inspiring for me to be a part of that? And
Mm.
then ultimately, what are the core strengths, the core competencies that are the main assets of the company that we can weaponize and make a huge part of our strategy to make us distinctive? In scaling up, one of our most important assets that we have is our intellectual property.
Yep.
And so we put that in a book, we put that in a master business course, we put that in coaching programs, and we put that in a coaching network of over 250 people in 200 countries around the world.
Wow.
So that understanding of the strategic asset and utilizing it in different and distinct ways allows our scaling up growth to continue and continue. The second part of the one page plan deals with the long range. You've heard the term BHAG, Big Hairy
Mhm.
Audacious Goal by Jim Collins.
Yes.
So, what is the difference we want to make in the world? So we want to educate over 20,000 cities in the world and bring scaling up hubs to each and every one of them to stimulate commerce and community in the local places that people live.
That's a
It's
BHAG.
yeah, that's our big hairy audacious goal and
Yeah.
it's not an easy one,
Yeah.
but we do it collectively as an organization,
Hmm.
and then we look at 3 to 5 year kind of what's the milestone? How do I know I'm going in the right direction? What would those initiatives be 3 to 5 years from now that would be so important? Open in East Asia, add certain ERP systems, hire certain key people in new functions, new product rollout. And then what are we going to do next year? What's our annual goal, which is that next step towards progress? And then we get down to what are we doing in the next 90 days? What's our quarterly goal? What's the few priorities that will have the biggest impact? And then how does everybody align to it? So, literally, a shared vision put on one piece of paper that's a playbook for the entire team to operate and understand where we're going as a group.
This is brilliant. So does the latter half, does that then change every 90 days? Because it's being reviewed, right? I mean, I'm really leaning in her because I see this as a tool, a ready tool, a one page, dashboard that, all businesses can rally their entire organization behind. So what is up top, that remains what it is because that's long term, right? And then
Yep.
do you review then what can we do in the next 90 days? Is that an evolving question? Is that organic?
Every 90 days, we get back together and we say, we had a goal for the year
Mhm.
to have, let's say, 10 million in revenue.
Mhm.
How much of it are we going to do in Q1?
Mm.
We had a goal to do X amount in profit. We had a goal to serve 5,000 customers. We had a
Mm.
goal to have an NPS score of over 85.
Mm.
In each quarter, we're measuring activities and priorities that bring us closer to how we get there by the end of the year. But every quarter, it can change. One quarter, I need to bring on more clients. Another quarter, I need to staff up to support new client activity. And you see how this is kind of interconnected with the ultimate goal at the end of the 4 quarters of achieving the annual destination that we all needed to get to.
Herb, have you ever had a situation where external factors threw you for a loop? What you had planned for the rest of the year, whether it's quarter two, quarter three, you realize this is not going to happen because prevailing circumstances in the market, for instance.
So, two things. Number one, our family company, the initial company I told you about with 54 years,
Hmm.
we navigated 13 different recessions successfully during that time. But the one you and me can probably most recently relate to was COVID.
Yeah.
We had clients coming to us that literally overnight dropped 10, 20, 50, 70% revenue and didn't know what to do.
Wow.
And from that point of view, we really had to lean in on strategy.
Mm,
And we had to look at strategic pivots, whether it was a pivot to a different client type, like from mid market clients to enterprise clients. If it was a pivot to product type, maybe we went from building windows to face masks,
mm,
unfortunately, which
mm,
were needed during COVID.
mm.
Or it was something like pricing and bundling, where everything was bundled, but then we had unbundled so that clients who needed more affordable, smaller solutions now had programs to access that. And so that's really what we call strategic pivoting in the extreme sense. But in non COVID times, it's normally progressive. But in that case, we had literally people pivoting in under 90 days, or they would have lost their company if they didn't.
Oh my goodness. You know, that's a very a sensitive topic for especially founders. They have a vision, they have goals, they're on their way. Sometimes the lack of agility, or so it seems, right, to steer differently, to pivot, to change, is not so much an issue of resources and capabilities. Sometimes it's just leadership will. Uh,
Um, yeah, you know what, Modesta,
mhm,
to follow that point,
mhm,
I was so impressed. I was so inspired by the agility, the creativity, and the resiliency of many of these owners and leadership teams that navigated that. It was absolutely a tremendous time for many people, but they handled it with pride and inspiration, and they didn't want to let their people, their team, and their customers down. And sometimes we don't know the best part of us or our ultimate potential until we're put to the ultimate test.
mm.
But I think the owners and the leaders responded unbelievably well.
This is phenomenal. Um, and what I'm also hearing then, Herb, and please correct me, that sometimes it is necessary to pivot. It's not failure. It's not giving up on the original vision and what you're set out to do, and you can actually grow from there. Could you give me examples of perhaps businesses that then decided that this is a new direction they want to take, post COVID, or others that were able to go back and scale and grow all the more? If you could share a couple of the experiences that you had.
Yeah, so if you think about owning a business in an industry,
Mm,
if your industry is growing, let's say 5% a year, let's say it's a mature industry
mm,
and it's only growing 5% a year,
mm,
and you're running the business, you have a good reputation, but you're stuck
mm,
and you're only growing 3% a year.
mm,
So at some point, you have to ask yourself, if the market's growing 5% and I'm growing 3,
mm.
somebody is eating my market share.
Yeah.
So in a scaling up company, one of the things that we look for in the ideal leadership team to coach
Hmm.
is that they need to be willing to run the company, create a strategy, a vision. How do I double market growth?
Mm,
Because if the market's growing at 5% and I want to be a market leader, do I have a vision and a strategy that I could grow at least 10% or more per year?
mm.
And we pivot when we're in existing industries and marketplaces and product lines where that's not happening.
So good. That's good. So tell us then. We've got business leaders listening in, and they're considering scaling. They're considering their next level of growth. And we've just spoken we've spoken about, some of the challenges that can come at you and some of the risks that are inherent in scaling, in growing, both internal when we started off the conversation and external. um, what what kind of what ways can they hedge their businesses in or mitigate risk, as they scale? Or rather, let me put it this way: what areas then should they look out for and look to hedge in and to mitigate risk as they grow?
Well, we look at four very important areas in the company. Number one are your people decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Are you dealing with a lot of drama,
Mm,
whether it's employees, clients, suppliers, sometimes even stakeholders
mm,
or shareholders?
mm,
And when you're dealing with a lot of drama, that tells us that your people decisions are not being optimized.
mm,
And we have to use some of the scaling up tools that we've developed to help you improve people decision making in your company, to improve the people relationships that are essential to growing and scaling your company.
mm-hmm,
Strategy: when a client is not growing minimally at market rate and hopefully double market rate or more, and your margins are not growing with it, then we have to look at strategy decisions, which are normally around who is the ideal client type,
mm-hmm,
most profitable, easy to work with, pays on time, gladly refers us to other people, and what promises do we bring to the market to serve them that they value
mm-hmm,
and make us unique from the competition. And when we're not getting that growth in top line and margin, we're normally not focused in the right client type with the right brand promise proposition. And then
mm,
thirdly, you could be working very hard. You could be growing top line, but you're working 100 hours a week and you have no bottom line to show for it.
mm,
That's normally around execution. And
mm,
we find that people are not understanding the right priorities. They're not looking at the right data and metrics to hold people accountable with. And
mm,
they don't have the right meeting rhythms for feedback loop and peer accountability.
mm,
And then the final area is cash. So, not cash only to pay the bills and keep the lights on,
mm-hmm,
but I'm talking about opportunity cash. Can I make that acquisition that's finally available? Can
yeah,
I hire that key executive that I always wanted to hire but could never afford? And now I can. So, opportunity cash to fund growth and to fund opportunity is very important. And we help our clients understand and deal with those decisions during scaling.
which of these four, Herb, do you feel, have you seen to be the most prevalent? Is it people? Is it strategy, decisions, execution, or cash? Like this tends to hold businesses back from scaling up.
I've seen all four.
Mm.
And during your scaling up journey at one time or another, you're going to hit all four. The question
Yeah, I was
is,
thinking that. Mhm.
yeah, the question is, where do you come in? So I see, I guess people is a big one I see in the beginning.
Mm,
And then I think a close second is strategy and execution,
mm,
because you're not in the right sandbox and you're not really getting traction with client acquisition, or people working in the business are not clear on the priorities or their accountabilities, and no one's talking about it.
ooh. Because by the time you're thinking of growth, I was thinking, and you can correct me. By the time you're thinking of growth, you probably have the opportunity. cash, or most of the time, right? I mean, just the fact that that's even a management conversation. Or is that an assumption I'm making that's not necessarily so?
Well, I think the first goal is to get growth happening, right? Year over year, meeting market growth, doubling market growth. And then what really happens with cash, how fast could we grow and still be self-funded?
Hmm.
Most companies cannot tell me that answer when I begin talking with them.
Mm.
And if I go to the bank, if I go to private equity, wherever, that can be expensive. So, what rate of growth can our current growth rate fund before we go outside?
Yeah.
We educate people on that, and then we educate them on ways to influence it to fund even higher self-funded growth rates. Then we make a decision whether or not we have so much market traction we need to bring additional funding from the outside on top of that.
So good. This is so good. Leader, if you've been applying for next level opportunities without success, it's probably because your CV, bio, and LinkedIn profile don't reflect the real value your knowledge, skills, experience, and expertise brings to the table. So they pass you up and engage more attractive candidates. You can change that. We've helped leaders secure the next level position and a seat on the decision making table in almost every sector imaginable, and would like to extend the Optimize Your Profile Bundle offer to you too. You will get custom professional CV, bio, and LinkedIn profile expertly done for you and delivered in no time. Click the link in the description to take advantage of this incredible limited time offer today so you never get passed up for opportunities again. Thank you for these. I keep on, leaning in and pressing in on these questions because these are real questions that our listeners have. What does it take to scale? When do I know? Uh, as the management team, as a leadership team, and I love the way you call it, the leadership team, whether to make a decision to scale or not. And you're providing us, from the dashboard tool that you talked about on strategy, to the main areas that would hinder growth and scaling, and then now really the pillars, right, to put in place to be able to come to a decision to scale. Now, may I just turn it to your experience in business over the decades? Is there a time that you struggled in any of these areas to scale your business? Maybe Sullivan and Cogliano.
Yeah, I think every company goes through certain inflection
Mm,
points where they meet a level of complexity that they haven't seen before.
mm,
So if you're a $10 million company wanting to be a $20 million company, you've never run or built a $20 million company
yeah,
before. So what does that mean? New locations, developing new leaders, developing new markets. When our company was growing initially, we were a strong regional brand and we were throughout New England.
hmm,
But over time, we were getting commoditized because national competitors kept coming in
mm,
and they kept lowering price and commoditizing. So we were a full service regional provider that ultimately had to pivot to a national niche provider.
oh wow,
And that pivot, I needed to learn, our leadership team needed to learn. Well, what does it take to be a national company with locations or service offerings in 50 states?
yeah,
What does it take to go from a full service provider to only doing IT technology professional workers?
yeah,
I then went through another phase with our leadership team where we went into North America and I'd never done business in Canada. Employment law, setting up banking, setting up accounting and legal support, offices, visas. So these level of complexities for owners or leadership teams can really block you up.
Mm.
And so that ability to navigate, to keep developing yourself, and I think this is a very important point, Modesta, especially with your leadership
Hmm.
focus. I think the biggest barrier to scaling up is the inability to scale up your leadership team.
Yeah.
Biggest barrier I've seen when that leadership team is not developing and working together to develop, your scaling is extremely limited.
Herb, I was going to ask you, and thank you so much for coming back to this. I was going to ask you, we've been talking about the what, the different areas, the things to look out for, the barriers, the pillars that need to be strengthened. I wanted to ask you, especially when we're saying remove yourself from the picture, you cannot be the be all and end all. You need to have a leadership team. My question now to a business leader listening in is how how do I develop uh, the leadership team that will be able to sustain the scaling?
Yeah. Um, it is not easy. I'm just Modesta in my particular journey.
Hmm.
The owners of the company, we had to be the face of the company. It was a professional service
Hmm.
company, and we were the top sales people, the top brand
Mm.
evangelists that when if we weren't selling, big deals were not coming into the
Mm.
company. And so when we really internalized the development of the leadership team as a priority, that was a paradigm shift.
Mm.
So, how do I go from understanding that my role was bringing in big accounts with other owners and partners to no, now my full time job is really developing strategy and developing senior leadership. And we hadn't done that
Yeah.
before. So, there was a learning curve. And I think what happens with that learning curve is one of two kind of big things. Number one, I either have the time and the bandwidth to develop people from within, which sometimes can be
Mm.
slow and not always successful, but important. Or I can also learn how to attract, recruit, and hire people with great leadership experience and background to bring into the company.
Mm.
And I don't think there's one perfect answer. I think it's situational. And we, quite frankly, had to do a little bit of both.
I was going to ask. Okay. And then, so did you, for instance, if you were to uh, recruit, did you then recruit locally so that you had local business leaders that understood the context, or did you move people who you had in different areas to different states, to different offices?
I think we tried, I'm going to say, on a limited scale where we relocated people. But ideally, we wanted people that not only knew the business, not only knew leadership, but they knew the market.
Mm.
And you had to be from there to know the
Yeah.
market. Because, when you have these national locations and you have a person managing all of Chicago and a person managing all of Colorado, it's a huge difference. You'll hit the ground running by being a part of that community already. And we learned that the hard way, but it was ultimately the right way to get local people whenever possible. Sometimes would have people that were opportunistic in the company who wanted to transplant. Their wife just took a job in Denver. They were successful with us. They knew our process. They had our values, and yet they were going to be in Colorado anyway.
Mm.
And we would take a flyer on that because they were a known entity for us. And now we needed to take a little time on market, bringing them up to speed. But I didn't have to worry about all the other things I would have to worry about bringing somebody in from the outside.
The values, the shared value, right? The shared vision, and the Sullivan Cogliano way, for instance.
Exactly. Exactly.
Herb, as a business coach, and as a business coach that's helping businesses scale, please speak to the fact that we sometimes are too internally focused on the leadership capacity, although that is really critical. That's like the foundation, and um, on our resources and our capabilities. There is, or even understanding how to grow and scale a business. I think there is a blind spot on really understanding markets, and this is the train you spoke of earlier. This hits leaders and their businesses unusually hard. Um, could you, as a business coach, speak to situations where there this was the right leadership team, the right business, but because of not really fully understanding their market, they weren't able to do as well? My example is, and I really, I'm probably going to take this from my own life, and my own leadership of what now, 8 businesses across 3 countries in developed and developing countries. Is I'm a leader who is passionate about my industry. I'm passionate about making a difference, and I build a business that, as much as we want to serve clients, it's very much from our motivations and our heart and our values and what we want to make a difference. And the market dynamics, um, and what is critical for market success, I am not fully aware. So I'm in this bubble, me and my team, wanting to make a difference and having traction in this market, but because I'm blindsided as to how the market works, and what other players are doing to really get the attention of the market. I find that I'm always operating. It's like you said, if the market is at 5%, you're at 3%. The two
Yeah.
percent is being eaten up somewhere. And now in my situation, I don't even know then how to make up that 2%. I don't even know what it takes, because in my estimation as a leader and as the team and as the business, we're doing all we know to do. But it's very internally focused.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think I understand. So as a market changes, one of the most important elements is for your leadership team to have reporting and analysis of customer feedback.
Mm,
There's many ways to do that. Number one, you have your traditional NPS client feedback survey. Number two, you have executive phone calls and seminars where they're calling up the top, 20%, top 20 clients, doing a sit down and getting very specific about what's happening in their industry, what's happening in their role, what are they seeing in the competition that they like, that they don't like. And by the way, we appreciate your business, but more importantly, how are we doing? And so we also go to our employees who are the closest to the client on the front
mm.
line. And once a quarter, what are the things the company should start, stop, or keep doing in relation to what you're hearing in the market? So we have this survey piece of our feedback. We have executive calling to ideal tier accounts. We have employee feedback because they're right in the trench hearing it. And we're putting it together in a way that now we have a customer listening program that's been activated. And the more you're listening, you'll start to pick out trends and opportunities along with threats.
So good.
And that's ultimately how we stay close to the market and listen, so we'll be ready to pivot to an area of the market that provides traction and growth.
This is so good. And both processes, both employees going to the market and what you'd mentioned before, having systems in place, you're monitoring on a daily basis, you're monitoring quarterly. I'm asking these very specific questions because there's someone taking notes on specifically what they're going to do with their business after we're done with this.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is your business ready for the next level? Can everyone in your organization articulate what you do, whom you serve, what you offer them better than the competition that they want and are willing to pay for, and how they can engage and buy from you? We can help you answer these questions with a next level business strategy. Click the link in the description to get started. Herb, could you speak a little bit more to then the scaling up master's business course and the coaching? What exactly is it? What exactly do you take businesses through, and how can they connect with the closest center or provider to them?
Yeah. So the I look at the scaling up journey in three big
Mm-hmm,
buckets. One is the initial scaling up
mm-hmm,
education. Do I know what the scaling up performance platform is? Have I read the playbook? And within the playbook, we have an amazing amount of tools that are resources that you adopt to go from education to implementation, which is the second step. Our scaling up course, which is offered by the Growth Institute, which I am one of their head instructors for, allows you and your team to enroll, to get scaling up education, and to start the use of the tools in adopting the playbook and implementing it in your company.
mm-hmm,
The third part is executive coaching and facilitated planning to help you go from adoption to implementation to ultimately mastery of the system. And it's normally a 1 to 3 year period in order for you to have that level of immersion and impact. So my coaching practice, what I've seen is that clients who have got education, that have started adoption, still can feel overwhelmed, and they want a
mm,
guide, an advisor to help them thoughtfully implement and master and facilitate their quarterly annual plannings, because they know it's a great investment, because they don't want to learn the hard way.
yeah.
And, I've been using it as a CEO practitioner for over 20 years. And I've been a professor and a coach now for over 5. And when you can share those experiences, help people avoid landmines and
Mm.
roadblocks and accelerate their adoption and, more importantly, their impact, people find that is a very valuable resource in helping them get to the vision of where they want to be.
So good. So good, especially the hand holding. I mean, it's not, for lack of a better word, you do not want to go through uh, the rigors on your own. You don't want to learn from mistakes. At times, you can't afford to learn from mistakes, right? So this is where your expertise and the framework, really comes in handy.
Yeah, Modesta, when I first began early
Mm,
2003, I was self implementing. I read the book, my leadership team read the
mm,
book, we started to self implement. And I went to dinner with a friend. I was telling him, and he goes, "What are you doing?"
mm-hmm,
I said, "Well, we're implementing," but I was telling him about some of my frustrations. And he goes, "Why would you play with your company with what you don't
Ooh.
know versus getting a professional who has been there and done that? It's not a hobby, Herb, it's your
Oh,
business."
wow.
And when he said it, it hit me right between
Mhm.
the eyes. I was treating it not with the level that I should have, in understanding I don't have time to
Yeah.
experiment. I need somebody that can really accelerate and help me avoid the landmines that I was hitting in the first 15 months on my own. So I got a business
Mhm.
coach. He was amazing. It really accelerated our thinking and development. And it was one of the best things I ever did. And he passed away some years ago, but it was one of the reasons why I do what I do now, is because I wanted to share that gift of how he helped my journey, him and my
Yeah.
father, and share that with other people that may be feeling the same frustration.
This is so good. Could you really what your friend said to you? Why on earth are you experimenting on your business? This is not a hobby. Could you just emphasize that to business leaders? Um, I think there is no greater and maybe faster or more sustainable way to grow your business than to get the help. Whether you're getting in the management systems and they're being integrated, or you get a coach. I think this thing of I'll wing it, or I'll do it myself, or I cannot afford to bring someone in. I feel like you actually cannot afford not to. I don't, what do you think, Herb?
No, I think that's the ultimate realization I came to, but I've learned when the student
Yeah.
is ready, the
Yeah.
teacher will appear. And in the first year, I
Mm,
was not ready. But I ultimately learned through
mhm.
that experience. But if I had to do it over again, I would have got my coach day one. But I needed to
Yeah.
live it and learn it. I'm so happy that we did. And 20 years later, it is one of the best decisions I ever did to read the book, implement the playbook with the team, and then ultimately use it in our scale up, and now ultimately share it with others as a
Thank you
coach.
for that. Herb, I have just one question because I mentioned this in my introduction when I was reading out your bio. I mentioned the book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, Scaling Up, and I'm sure somebody caught that. And now they're wondering when are they going to speak about mastering the Rockefeller habits? Is this something that you can maybe give us an outline of the habits? Not maybe not the process, but what these habits are for scaling business.
So, Vern studied the business habits of John D. Rockefeller. And John D. Rockefeller scaled Standard Oil, which is now Mobil Exxon, which back in the day was an extremely successful enterprise in and of itself, Standard Oil. He looked at the business practices of what John D. Rockefeller did in scaling that business, and he came up with 10 habits that were essential for every scaling up team to adopt. The first, the executive team has to be healthy and aligned,
Hmm.
because if they're not healthy and aligned, they can't do any of the 9 other habits.
Hmm.
Secondly, is everyone in a company know the number one thing that needs to be accomplished in the quarter to move the company forward?
Hmm.
Number 3, are communication rhythms established in moving freely, accurately up and down the entire company each and every day? And we have meeting rhythms that help us do that. Does every facet of the company have one person assigned with accountability, knowing what the results need to be for that function?
Hmm.
Number 5, Are we collecting employee input and identifying obstacles and opportunities within the staff that we have at our company?
Mm-hmm.
Number six, are we reporting and analyzing that customer feedback data, which you and me talked about
Yeah.
earlier, to make sure that we have market listening and accurate information about what's going
Yeah.
on? Number seven, are our values and purpose alive in the company, not written on paper, but being lived by the employees in the company working together?
Yeah.
Number eight, do all of the employees know the key components of the company strategy? Do they know the BHAG?
Mm.
Do they know where we are in relation to hitting it? Do they know who the ideal customer is? And do they know the value proposition promises that we deliver to make us unique? And if somebody went up to your employee in a cocktail party and said, "What does your company do?"
Mm.
could they answer that thoughtfully and in a compelling way?
So good.
Number nine, do all employees know whether or not quantitatively they had a good day or a good week for accountability and productivity? And number 10, the company's plans and performance are visible to everyone throughout the entire company each week.
Wow.
And when we get all of those over time
Mm.
institutionalized, not implemented, institutionalized in our companies, we do exceptionally well.
Herb, say that again. Institutionalized, not implemented.
Yeah, because what happens is when we implement without institutionalized, they don't stick.
Mm.
So we need to implement and then have them sticky so that one week, 1 year, 5 years, we're still doing all of Rockefeller habit number one, two, 10, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes companies want to implement so
Yeah.
quickly, they're doing it one quarter, they get distracted. Next quarter, they no longer do it anymore.
And that's what made Rockefeller have the staying power, right? The consistency in application, such that you have systems institutionalized, and then Rockefeller is able to work on rather than in the business and in all the businesses that the family is known for investing in.
Yeah, it's I think to your point, Modesta, it takes discipline and focus
Mm.
to implement this in an extremely productive way.
Mm.
So you need to be patient, you need to be focused on one of these habits at a time. There's 40 elements, four for each of the 10 habits.
Mm.
I never got a perfect score, but it was the journey to trying to get a perfect Rockefeller habit score
Yeah.
that had us achieve all the Inc. 5000 success.
Wow.
So you got to be patient, progress over perfection,
Yeah.
but good things will come as you start to work on all of them over time.
This is brilliant, Herb. I don't have a single other question. Maybe just to say, how do people reach you? Where do they go?
Yeah, so my website is aspiregrowthadvisors.com. On my website, I have a free assessment if you want to know your company's scaling up readiness to grow. Simply click on the scaling up business readiness assessment and you can get an initial score. And I'm happy to follow up with any of the listeners that want to review their score to see what the implications are for their next level growth.
That's brilliant. Herb Cogliano, thank you so much for this conversation. And thank you for the level of detail and honestly, your Authenticity and grace. The, you speak from experience, and you speak from uh, your humanity as well. Like, look, this is going to be a process. It'll take a while. There's an ebb and flow. Give yourself grace. Do these things consistently, and you will get there. And the fact that in everything you're speaking to, you never speak to the individual leader at the apex standing there, or sitting on that seat. You're speaking to the leadership team, and that makes
Yes.
all the difference in business.
Well, I thank you. Those are extremely kind words. I've enjoyed my time tremendously, and I hope we get to talk again sometime down the road.
I hope so too, Herb. Thank you very much for joining us on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Have a wonderful week.
Thank
Thank you.
thank you, and you. Bye.